and welcome to Alzheimer's Speaks Radio. I'm your host, Lori LeVay, and I'm so excited that you're joining us today. We are going to have a fascinating conversation as usual as we learn from people all around the world at all ages and stages of life. Stay tuned as we shift our dementia care from crisis to comfort.
Here we go. What you think about, you will bring about the mental change. We will.
Well, hi, everyone, and welcome to Alzheimer's Speaks. I'm thrilled you are joining us today. We're going to be talking with Coro Health, who has been a guest on our show in the past, and they are just doing marvelous, marvelous work. And today we're going to be talking about that intersection of music, neuroscience, and healthcare. And boy, is that a topic to be had. I would also like to encourage people to go to alzheimersspeaks.com, check out all of our free educational resources, and also go to Dementia Map, our global resource directory as well. There you'll find over 150 categories that you can search. It's free to use, and we're not going to ask you for any personal information as well. And upcoming shows that I want to mention to you: on March 1st, we are going to be doing a tribute for Naomi Feil, who has really been the godmother of dementia. She passed away on December 24th. And if you'd like to honor her, please join us. Also on February 29th, I'll be interviewing Donna DeVillers from Scotland, who's doing some really great stuff. All of that information you can find right on our homepage at Alzheimer's Speaks to figure out how to connect with us on those things. So let's go ahead and introduce you to Dave Schofman with Coro Health. David, I'm so excited to have you back on the show. It's been quite a while, and I've been impressed with your work at Coro Health, from the first time we talked. I just think it's absolutely amazing. I know you got a lot of new stuff going on, but I'm going to start out by having you introduce yourself, because you can do a much better job than I can, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so thanks again for having me back, and it has been a while, and obviously we follow your work, and we're just continue to be impressed by everything that you've done and everything that you do for the industry and for so many people, and so thank you first and foremost. But I'm David Schofman with Coro Health, and we've been in business for 15 years now, if you can believe that. It's hard to imagine, but yeah, I'm very, very, very glad to be here and talk about what we're doing and learn a little bit about what you're up to as well.
How did you get into this field? Were you touched by dementia in your own family or circle of friends, or?
Yeah, it's a long story, but I will do the abbreviated version here, as you know. But it all matured out of the beginning of Coro Health, right? And, the impetus for Coro Health really came through a couple of convergence of a couple of things coming together. So one is my passion for music, which, as I've shared with you, I'm an amateur musician, and that's being very generous with the word amateur. But I play guitar and sing a little bit. And so first of all was my passion for music. Secondarily was, my middle daughter's a special needs kid. And when she was young and my wife and I were trying to do what parents do and search for answers, we stumbled across the field of music therapy and candidly had never even heard of it or knew anything about it. And we enrolled my daughter in there, and we started seeing some really magical transformation with her through the power of music and music in the brain and how it was working with her. And then at the same time, my mom's been a hospice nurse for almost 50 years. And she worked with individuals with Alzheimer's and dementia, and had shared, so many wonderful stories about how she used music as part of her care plan. And she literally, you'll laugh at this, but I'll age both of us here when I tell you the story. But she actually used to go around with Sony Discmans, if you remember those, in the trunk of her car, and several hundred CDs. And as part of establishing a care plan with an individual, and she was a home hospice nurse. And so as part of the care plan, when she arrived on site and started working with them, she'd find out what kind of music they liked, and she would literally leave CDs there and with the family to be playing different types of music with her with them. And then when they passed, she'd obviously pick them up, and she would tell stories of all these amazing stories about, when certain songs would come on and how people would come to life, and how, through their end of life care, how it was such a powerful tool. And then when we got into starting Coro Health, which, as you recall, we just decided there's got to be a better way than kind of the traditional form that music therapists were doing. Not that they don't do amazing work; they do amazing work, and we're very grateful for all of the music therapists that work with us, every day. But unfortunately, there's only 5,000 or 6,000 of them that are certified in the United States, and the world for that matter. And it's not, a lot of times it's not covered by insurance, and so it's expensive. And so we just figured there's got to be a way to bring therapeutic music to individuals without a music therapist, always present, unfortunately. And so, we put together a team of music therapists, music designers, and neuroscientists, and kind of put them in a room and said, can we create a tool for caregivers and, to use when there's not a music therapist available to them. And so, to answer your question, really, our first, I don't even know, probably 50 to 100 customers were all in memory care and dementia care. And that's just kind of where we cut our teeth. And we used to spend, days and weeks and months inside these communities and working with individuals that had, different forms of Alzheimer's, dementia, and related disorders. And, there was thousands of individuals whose lives we were touching, and obviously stories that I could tell you for hours about some of the amazing things that we saw coming out of that journey. So that's when it really hit home to me, and we realized, we've got a community of people here that we can really do a lot of good with, and we've got to continue to fight for them and make the product better.
Wow. Well, and that is so important. I was just interviewing somebody from the Davos Alzheimer's Collaborative, and they were talking about, neurologists and how there's not enough of them. And you're talking about music therapists and there's not enough of them. I mean, there's such a lack in what we need in terms of staff to really help support people. So I'm so glad that, you got creative and created Coro Health, because it's helped so many people in so many different areas. And I also love that you applied your daughter who has a disability. Music affects all of us. And I think it's something that we all take for granted. We don't really
Right.
understand the power of how it changes our moods and all of that. It's pretty miraculous.
Yeah.
And we enjoy it.
Yeah. Well, we're all kind of our own music therapists, right? I mean,
Mm.
you use music on a daily basis, just like I do, and so many, almost everyone in the world does. And as we get older, and unfortunately, those especially that are affected with some sort of brain, injury and or God forbid, get Alzheimer's or some form of dementia, you lose that ability sometimes to be able to be your own therapist anymore. And so part of our job is, through music and memories, is trying to figure out, what's going to trigger that autobiographical response in people, and when you do it and you do it right, it's incredible. I mean, we've shared with you some of the stories of individuals that we have that were, even nonverbal and completely uncommunicative and combative, and how our caregivers use music to, basically wake them up again, and for a certain amount of time. And, it's a gorgeous, beautiful thing. It's just heartwarming for all of us when we hear these stories, because it's, it truly transforms people's lives. And something as simple as music that you say, like you said, that we use all day, every day in our lives, but you just don't, it's when I started the company, I certainly had no idea that music impacts, literally every region of the brain, and I've shared some of those stories, and some of the neuroscience behind that is just, it really is incredible.
And the knowledge of that's been around for a long, long time, but it hasn't really been discussed publicly where the average Joe understands the power of the music. I bought old music from the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s. That's kind of my genre. And my grandkids, always like, well, name one of your favorite bands or something. And I'm like, oh, I liked Brad. I liked Hall and Oates. And, oh, those are goofy names. And then they listen to my music and tell me how silly it is. I said, but it calms me down. It,
Right.
brings me right back in sync. And my whole family knows if I get dementia, do not, no matter what, if I get it or not, do not get rid of all those CDs. Keep my CD player and my CDs,
Right.
go ahead and download them and things. But, I want that music with me because I know the power of it.
Yeah.
And, why replace it, later on and stuff when I can handpick, what it is that I like. But I think most of us don't really think about that, ahead of time.
Yeah.
And, although you do get a lot of people who are doing playlists and things, but I don't think they think of it long term in terms of what it does, to
Right.
the people.
Yeah.
Um, let's talk about supporting individuals with Alzheimer's disease or other forms of dementia. When do you try to get your product in their hand? And well, maybe we should talk about the product itself, because you have a lot of different genres that you offer as well.
We do, yeah. No, it's, unfortunately for, usually, there's somewhere, down the path before we, get engaged. I mean, we do, as you know, support individuals on a wide range of the care spectrum, from assisted living all the way down through hospice and everything in between. But those with Alzheimer's and dementia, we're generally, by the time that we're engaged with them, they're generally somewhere along in the disease process, right? And for some of them, they're able to verbalize to us, what it is that they like and what it is that they want. And others, it's a little bit of a matchmaking process, where we go through and we ask a series of questions. And, through that, we scroll down through to, what is the genre, what is the style, right, of music that they want, and that we feel like is going to really impact them. And then a lot of it is doing interviews with family members, and trying to understand, just like you just said, what is it that mom or dad or brother or sister, used to listen to, and it has to do with not only, sometimes, their age, which is, relatively easy from a genre perspective, but also where they grew up. I mean, if you grew up in New York City, and the musical brain is kind of formed between 12 and 20, and so where were you in those formative years, and what were you listening to? And just because if you grew up in the South like I did in Texas, it's probably very different music than somebody who grew up in New York City or California or whatever. And so finding out what that is and drilling down and finding using the word that you use, being able to build that playlist for them is it's the key part to being able to open up that part of the brain. And you mentioned this earlier that there's not enough information and knowledge in caregivers that really understand the science, but it was really only in the last 10 or 15 years with functional imaging that we could really start to see how the brain reacts when there's different types of music that are being played. And I'm sure the famous story by now, and some of your listeners probably do as well, of Dr. Sachs and the movie that he put out, and being able to show him listening to Bach versus Beethoven. It's such a great story because I can't remember if it was Bach or Beethoven was his favorite musician between the two, but one of them he liked and the other one he really didn't like, right? And so they had him on the fMRI machine and they're watching his brain while he's listening to Bach and while he's listening to Beethoven. And with one, his brain would light up and the other one, it wouldn't. And the interesting part was when they confused him and they put on two different songs, one by Bach and one by Beethoven, that were very similar. And he couldn't tell the difference between them just from his ear. But one, his brains continued to light up and the other one it didn't. So even at the deepest level, when you're not even conscious of something that you're listening to, that resonates with your brain, it still is showing those positive kind of reactions and reinforcements, which is really amazing and cool to think about. If you take a step back, it's really pretty incredible.
It is. Now, if I remember correctly, you had some kind of technology behind the average music out there. Is that something you're still doing?
It is, yeah. So we break down every song into its, Debbie likes to call this, who who works with me, into our its musical DNA. So we break down the music into about 20 different subcategories, and we're looking at everything from, at a high level, we're looking at tempo, we're looking at, tonal clarity, we're looking at brightness, we're looking at a bunch of different musical characteristics. And then we take that and we cross-reference it with, the individual's background, their medical condition, their musical preferences, and then we are adding and subtracting music based on what that individual's needs are. We even remove lyrics, based on, if someone has an interest in certain types of lyrics, or disinterest, if it's politics or religion or violence or whatever it is, and we have the ability to remove those, or if they're suffering from depression. I always kind of make the joke, and it is exactly tongue in cheek, but it pretty much counts out all country music, right? So anything about death or dying. So, but it's a bad exaggeration, but you get the point, and that is, we're looking at everything down to even lyrical analysis, and then matching that up with the individual, and that's what we call our music prescription builder, which is part of our patented technology that you were referring to.
Okay. Wow. For me, I'm just a novice. I like music. I'm lucky I can even remember a band's name or a song title. I just know if I like it or not in the background. And I've always been like that. And to hear all the different levels that you can break it down in is just it kind of fascinates me, because I always get the package, together.
Right.
And I've never really thought about breaking down, pulling this out or pulling that out, and things.
And it's really based on the outcome, Lori, that you're trying to drive, right? I mean, so, I should have said that initially, is that, we focus on wake, sleep, energy, and relax. Those are the four main categories that we look at. And, basically what the music prescription builder does is, if you're trying to take someone with an energy program, for example, so let's just say that they have a rehabilitation coming up in 30 minutes, or even a meal coming up, and you've got to get them from, a lower mental state to a more energetic state so that they can be transitioned, and they can enjoy their meal. So taking them from point A, and over the course of, let's just say, 5 or 10 songs, moving them up in tempo, moving it up in vocalization and instrumentation. And so, consciously or subconsciously, you're increasing their heart rate, you're increasing respiratory rate, and you're trying to get them so that when the caregiver comes and it's time to transition them, they're in a better energetic state, right? And so the opposite would be true on a relaxed program, when you're trying to meet them where they are, which is at a high, intensive state right now, and you're trying to slowly take them down through a progression. So that progression is a big part of what we do as well. So you take that and you mix it with the songs, and now you got the right songs in the right order, taking them to the right outcome. And that's really what you're trying to accomplish.
Well, and that's a great thing to know. I mean, I think of the example of my grandkids, sometimes they get a little riled up before bedtime, and it's like, don't be listening to that, or don't be doing that activity. You're supposed to be calming down. And, so it applies to, I think, all of us at all ages and stages of life. We're just able to control that, a little bit more. And again, I think a lot of times it's unconsciously how we use music and stuff. So I find it really interesting. I also find interesting is that even though it's for, the patient or the person being diagnosed or whoever this musical prescription is for, it also helps others around them, especially if there's agitation and things like that, or someone just trying to do their job and getting somebody either to bed or in the shower or down for a meal. It makes life easier for everyone. And I think that that's something that isn't discussed enough either, that people understand that impact.
You're right. And, it's interesting that you bring that up, because, one of the key elements is, I'll back up just a second. One of the key elements of our clinical work has always been focusing on what can we do to impact caregiver burden, right? And so, our phase 1 clinical trial that we did over a decade ago, we weren't directly measuring that. We didn't even think about it, to be honest. We were focused on agitation and depression in the individual, of which, as we were very successful at accomplishing. our current phase 2 clinical trial, which we're working on right now at the NIH, is one of the requirements for working with those with AD and related disorders is that it does, and you have to measure the impact of caregiver burden. So we're looking at agitation, depression, of course, just like we were before. We're looking at movement, respiratory rate, and then caregiver burden, fits right up there. And so it has to be measured. And so the good news is that, it's starting to get that type of attention, because I don't have to tell you and your audience, how stressful it is, and, how it spills over. And so, part of what we do is obviously to help the individual, to help the patient and try to get them, as I said, from one state to another. But that so much impacts the caregiver, and there's so much stress that's put on them. And, they care so much about the individual that they're working with. And, even though the music, we always say, and it's kind of a funny anecdote, is that in a lot of one of our most used programs is specifically for sundowning. Mm-hmm. And so our sundowning programs are extremely popular. And, they are very Pavlovian in nature. They are in a lot of places. We play the exact same programs at the exact same time of day, right? Because, again, it does become Pavlovian. They know when this comes on, it's time to start settling down and working towards, what the evening activities are, or even towards bedtime. But it's all about reducing anxiety and agitation. Well, because of the state of the individuals that we're working with, they may or may not, directly recall that program from the day before. And so, when it's played over and over, sometimes the caregivers will reach out and just say, enough already. We have to hear this one more time. But then we remind them, this isn't for you, right? This is, in that case, right? I mean, this is, and then they remind us, they're like, you're right. This really works. It's the right thing to do. But if I have to listen to Yanni one more time, I don't know what I'm going to do. But yeah, no, but it is obviously is designed to support the caregivers. And that's a big part of what we do.
I remember when my mom was in the nursing home, and I approached the executive director, and I said I wanted to buy handheld shower heads for all the bathrooms. And the reason was I learned something through Teepa Snow, where she said we lose our fat pads and stuff. And Doug says, he just kind of shakes his head. He's like, you have this uncanny knack of coming in just at the right time. He pulls out a blueprint, and he's like, what else would you like in the bathrooms, And one of the things that I had mentioned, on top of that was color and heated floors and all these different things was music. Right. And I said, if you could get the right music pumped in, and even a little aromatherapy to calm things down. And I said, ideally, I'd love to have the staff learn the words so that everybody can sing together. But it's such a little thing with such a huge impact. I mean, it's just such a massive, massive impact in terms of how music can be leveraged, and, how you can have fun and calmness and joy, instead of frustration or anxiety, or, people not sleeping. I mean, it goes on and on and on, with so many of these things. And it's just such important work that you're doing. Now, in terms of, people purchasing this, what do they do? How do you offer this to individuals, or do you just sell it to communities and hospice and home health care? Why don't you let our audience know how that works?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So there's, first of all, you're talking about singing. So I want to touch on that really quickly, because it is a new product that we introduced about 9 months ago, that's become very popular, which is our senior sing-along, which is, about 1,000 songs that are specifically curated, for individuals in these conditions. And so, bringing together those groups to sing is obviously a huge thing, and a big part of what we're doing in trying to, take karaoke to another level and make it a little bit more therapeutic in nature. But yeah, so we offer, that product is available through, let me step back and answer most of your question here. So we primarily sell through long-term care communities, and that's basically where we started. We've got over 6,000 locations that use our service now, which is hard to believe considering our little humble beginnings out of my garage. But yeah, we have 6,000 locations using our services today. And that's predominantly both our music product and our faith product, along with the sing along product that I mentioned to you a minute ago. So we sell through those communities, and so at home we offer the sing along product as well as our faith first product. So Music First is the name of our music product, and that's because we train individuals on using the music first as part of their care plan versus pharmacological or other types of intervention, and then Faith First as well. Which we cover, as you know, it's a multi-faith tool where we cover 7 different denominations of faith and spirituality, with our content. So that can be purchased individually as well. And then we have, this new bundle product that I've told you about, where we're bringing together a bunch of our partners as well and being able to sell that both in homes and in long-term care communities.
Well, that's really exciting to hear all of that and to see how much you've expanded since when we first talked. That's just absolutely incredible.
Yeah, the spirituality piece of it has really become popular, Lori. And it was a challenge when we started this product. We literally started Faith First 10 years ago, and the history there. And individuals in these, I should say, administrative people in our long-term care communities, even those that specialize in Alzheimer's and dementia, they unfortunately the lawyers got involved in most of this and were stopping the growth of that product because they were just so concerned about being sued, which is just absolutely ridiculous. So, and here we were providing this great tool to support individuals that were displaced from their place of worship. And, especially those that have Alzheimer's and dementia, it's such a huge part, obviously, of in so many cases of where they came from. And you talk about, triggering memories and something that comforts them. Anyway, it took all the way up until COVID, to be honest with you, until all of a sudden the barriers came down and all of a sudden our phones started ringing off the hook and everybody was like, because they had no more volunteers. They had no more way to transport people on the weekends, to their place of worship. And, even pastoral care, was limited, right? And, chaplains weren't allowed in the building. And so, that's when the phone, really started ringing, as I said, with Faith First. And we really expanded that product line and started bringing it to more and more people. And, we have a weekly mass now. We have Bible studies, educational content, 2 different forms of the Bible, and then we have, in addition to Christianity and Judaism and Buddhism, we have Islamic, we have Native American. So we're trying to support, multiple dimensions of faith there and through inspirational content and meditations. And we have an entire wisdom council that oversees all of the content and makes sure that we, are putting out our very best efforts on what we can provide people. But yes, it has come a very, very long way to answer your point.
Well, it's too bad those legal beavers get in the way sometimes. It's
Trove
so
is crazy.
sad.
I know.
And I mean, everyone talks about, this holistic healing and faith is such a big part of people's lives.
Yeah.
And, we need to put that in the mix. If you are just hopping on right now, we are talking with David Schofman with Coro Health. And we've been talking about this integration of music and neuroscience and just living better and what an impact it can have on not only someone diagnosed or dealing with a form of dementia, but also the care partners and those around them that are serving them as well. You can always go to their website, which is corohealth.com. They are also on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Twitter, or X. I'll never call it X. I
don't think any of us will get that right.
And all of that is in the show notes as well. We are going to hear a little bit about Q-Block, and we will be right back. I also want to introduce you all to Q-Blocks. They have been absolutely excellent to deal with. They have been in business for 18 years and they serve the globe. I can't say enough good things about this company. I've had a lot of bad experiences. I don't know about you with tech companies. They have made a very complicated process very easy. And their staff is so kind, so polite, so respectful to work with. And when I am frustrated and ready to pull my hair out, they just smile and tell me everything's going to be okay. And they really are just on top of the communication, which alleviates so much stress as an owner when you're dealing with tech issues. You can get a 10% discount. Visit them at QBlocks, at QBlocks.com, or you can email them at letstalk@qblocks.com. For that 10% discount, just put Lori, Lori, in the inquiry form. And again, I don't think you'll be disappointed. I surely haven't been. I can't rave enough about this company. And that's kind of rare these days. So, Dave, I want to talk to you. You had mentioned, you had done some trials in the past. Do you have any that you're in the thick of right now, or plans for the future?
Yeah, so we're right in the middle of our phase 2 clinical trials, which I alluded to a little bit earlier. So our first clinical trial we did 10 years ago, focused on agitation and depression, and the results have been published and peer reviewed in the Journal of Music and Medicine. And we showed reductions in agitation of up to 54% with those with Alzheimer's and dementia. And so it was just an incredible success. We were thrilled with it, but we also knew there was a lot more work to do. We were still at the very beginning of building out our music prescription builder. We knew there was other things that we needed to be measuring besides, just agitation and depression, which is why in our phase 2 clinical trial that we're working on right now, we're expanding that scope, significantly. First of all, we're going from 2 communities to 20 locations, which is going to be a massive undertaking. This is going to be about a 2.5-year endeavor for us to do this. And so in addition to agitation and depression, we're going to be looking at movement. We're going to be looking at, increasing appetite. We're going to be looking at changes in respiratory rate. And then, of course, as I mentioned earlier, we're really going to be focused heavily on reduction of caregiver burden. And so that's really what our big focus is going to be in this phase 2.
Wow, that's really interesting. When you mentioned movement, one of the things I will just mention, because I love this story, but I had one couple that utilized music every morning when they got out of bed and every night before they went to bed. And their ritual was that they would dance. And they would dance to the music that they loved. And one person was going blind and the other partner had dementia.
Oh, wow.
But it gave them that physical contact that so
Right.
often is missed. And it just brought them both back to a happier place. And I think one of the things that music can do, and I don't know if there's been any studies on this, but I saw it with my own mom where she would have more lucid moments with music.
Right.
And just be so in sync for a longer period of time. It was really kind of fascinating. But I think, when we're able to calm the brain down and let it relax, it's easier probably to sort things out. And that's one of the things I hear from my guests on Dementia and the Arts is when they're in the zone, their symptoms decrease. And it seems like that's exactly what music is doing as well. And I just wish everybody understood that, the
Yeah.
power behind the arts.
Yeah, it's kind of a life journey, right, for us. And like I mentioned earlier in the session is, when you trigger that right song or that right group of songs, it makes such a enormous impact. And the thing is, it's so easy to do that, and in the medical community anyway, and it's getting so much better. And you've seen this over the last couple of decades of doing all the great work that you do, is that, it's always been this first reaction, and it's what they've been trained on in medical school too, is, they just go to the med cart. And it's just, there's so many better, shouldn't say better, there's different ways to address, someone when they're in an acute situation. And, whether that's through music, whether that's through, just regular engagement, with them and listening to them and working with them, whether it's through art, whether it's through movement, just as simple as movement sometimes, there's just so many alternatives. And, a lot of the stuff that was kind of frou-frou-y and voodoo-y and all this other sort of stuff, 20 years ago is now becoming more mainstream. It really is. And, you see this in, this whole wellness movement that's going on. And I think that, this next generation, our generation that's going to be, going into long-term care or some sort of, life journey of our own as we age. I think that, it's changing. The mentality towards, these alternative forms of care is changing. I think there's a demand for it. There's more movement in the insurance industry to supporting it, which is all going to validate, that this is real. We're seeing this even when we talked earlier about Faith First. We talked about, for the first time coming out of COVID, the CMS codes were released for pastoral care in the VA. We're like, whoa, wow, wait, they're considering reimbursement for spiritual support? Like, what's happening? This is fantastic news, and so I think there is a movement that's going on, but it never feels like it can go fast enough.
Oh, I agree. I totally agree. And I think the kids are being taught in school different things too. I remember taking my two granddaughters for a walk, and one was riding her scooter, and she like popped off her scooter, just popped off, and then she sat on the ground cross-legged with her hands like this and went and she started meditating just out of nowhere. And it was like, what are you doing? She's like, I'm meditating. I just need a little calmness. It was just a perfect spot, Grandma.
That is so awesome.
I know. They're
Yeah.
very in tune to their likes and their dislikes and what's going on.
Right,
They too love music, and,
right.
it's fun to see them get in their zones and really appreciate that. And
Yeah.
I see the calmness. I still have this old, cause I'm 64 now. So I have the grandma mode of turn the lights on and turn the music off and do your homework. But I remember doing the exact same thing and being able to concentrate
Right,
and didn't
right.
have a problem at all. And I'm like, okay, I got to let that go, because I did the same thing, and I could see fine. I could do my homework fine, but I was just in the zone. And sometimes we get a little judgy with that stuff, I think.
Right, right. And what works for one person is so different than what works for another person. I always tell the story. I played golf in high school and in college, and there was a guy on my golf team. And again, I'm dating myself because we had tapes and, big wires and headphones on. But he used to listen when we would go and warm up to play golf. I'm listening to classical music, or maybe I would get crazy every once in a while, and listening to, I don't know, something a little bit harder than that, but not much. But anyway, he would warm up every day to Metallica. And I was
I was
like,
going to say Pink Floyd. Yeah.
how in the world are you listening to Metallica before you go out and go play golf? But that's what worked for him. And he's like, okay, whatever gets you. I don't know how that gets your rhythm and tempo working, but okay.
Well, they always say we all have our own little beat that we go to,
Yeah, yeah,
and they're not always the same. That's for sure. I love, that you have this music prescription builder. Is that
yeah,
correct?
yeah.
I am so into the whole social engagement and social care that I don't think is being compensated or talked about the way it needs to be. I think the last couple of years we're hearing it bubble to the top more, but it isn't always a pill, that can help us. Granted, it's probably going to be the cure, but it's not always the care
Right.
in my eyes. And I think the care piece is so important to be able to provide that in a dignified fashion that's customized to the person and those around them as well. Well, how do you see that kind of expanding in the future? Do you see it, opening up? I know you had mentioned that earlier with the pastoral care and things, and I know CMS is doing their dementia guide, which is supposed to pull more
Right.
stuff in. What are your thoughts with all of that?
I mean, I think that personalized medicine, it's a little bit of an overstated, statement these days, but it's not really used.
Mhm.
It's not part of when you say personalized medicine, that generally means, well, what prescription bottles do you have that are personalized for you? But there's just so much more than that, that we alluded to earlier with this whole wellness movement. I mean, I think that personalized medicine is going to finally, over the next 10 or 20 years, incorporate not just your medicine and your prescriptions that way, but all of these other different forms of care, whether it's meditative, like your granddaughter was talking about, or, it's using different forms of engagement tools, like health and fitness obviously is a huge one of those. Education is another huge one of those, and how all of that fits into the care plan. And I think it's going to go that way. I think you're already seeing it go that way. And I think that when you fast forward and, referencing back to CMS, I think that part of the care plan is going to be, like you said, spiritual support, music support, fitness support, educational support. It's going to be broader. I mean, that's our hope, right? I mean, that's why we're doing this. That's why we're pushing as hard as we're pushing and trying to figure out a way to get the rest of the world to pay attention, especially the CMS of the world. I mean, it's just, and again, I think it comes down to our generation is going to force that to happen. And it's no longer going to be just this, fringy thing.
Yep. Yeah, I always kind of get on my pedestal and talk about, I wish pharma would include some of these things in their trials. So they would have the placebo, they'd have the pill, but then they'd have like a social engagement piece, to see how does that affect? Because we know it changes the chemistry in the body. And
Right.
so I would think that would change how someone reacts to a medication as well. And, I'm not a medical person, I'm not a scientist, so what do I know? But I just think we could push things forward faster working together versus having lobbyists trying to squash things down and build things up.
Right.
And
A
instead
lot
of
of
looking
money.
at,
There's a lot of
well,
money in the
it's a,
pharma side.
oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. That's for sure. Well, why don't you tell us a little bit more about some of the new stuff that's happening? I know you've got Cure Radio, you mentioned the sing-alongs and things, and then we can kind of get into the engagement bundle as well.
Yeah, no, I would love to tell you about that. So we've got, a lot of new products that we've released, obviously. So you mentioned two of them. So one is, on the music first side, just starting there, we're always adding, more and more content, more and more songs, more and more, advanced technology to the music prescription builder, but specifically, turning back to customer wants and needs. Care Radio was a result of our customers wanting something that was entertainment and not always just, our core therapeutic wake, sleep, energy, and relax programming. And so, we built out the radio product, which was specifically designed to just be a genre-based radio station, really, at the end of the day. The only difference is, we play, as you know, certain types of songs at certain times a day to support that. So it's different than just turning on a traditional radio. And then, the sing-along product we talked about as well. So we've got about 1,000 to 1,500 specifically curated songs, for, I guess it's karaoke at the end of the day. We like to call it senior sing along, but that's because the key that we put the music in, the tempo that we play it in, and obviously the songs that we chose are specifically curated for individuals, in a long term care setting or at home that are 70 plus probably would be the demographic that we're focused on. And so, yeah, so those are on our side. And then, you mentioned the engagement bundle. I'm glad to talk about that if you want me to as well.
Yeah, please. I do have one question for you before you go there, though, because we're seeing a lot more people with early onset, being diagnosed earlier. Do you, or maybe you already have done this, targeted some of those genres? Because that's one of the things that they say is, there's there's not as much support for us who are younger
Right.
in dealing with this. Is that something that you've incorporated?
It is. We actually go all the way through the 2010s. So, for we always say from Tony Bennett to Taylor Swift. So, because you have to. It's an unfortunate, reality. And I've experienced personally, and that in with our customers, and it's terrible. But I mean, individuals even in their 40s and 50s, we're starting to see it. And I had a gentleman that we were doing an installation. This was 10 years ago in a long-term care community, and I thought he was a member of the staff. And he's sitting on a bench in a memory care wing, and I walked in. I introduced myself, just as nice as he could be, and went about my business and went back out to the truck to get some wires or whatever we were doing, and walked back in. He stood up and introduced himself again, and it just broke my heart.
Yep, it is happening more and more out there for people, that's for sure. Why don't you talk about the engagement bundle and what that's all about?
Yeah, so this is a project that we started about 18 months ago, and the high level on it is there's about there's some really good content partners out there that are focused on engagement. And, obviously what we do in music is wonderful, but there's a lot of other great companies out there that are doing other areas. And so, at the end of the day, we looked around and we said, wow, there's so many great companies out there. We're all selling to the same people. We're all basically priced about the same. Why can't we get together and work together? And so, we sat down and we said, there's got to be a way to do this. And so we brought together at the end of the day, we brought together 7 different companies. And so Spiro 100 that focuses, as you know, on fitness and fall prevention and meditation. There's us, Coro, obviously. There's One Day University, who provides lectures, education, and inspiration through lots of different types of content with professors from esteemed schools all over the world. Memory Bio, you probably know Beth very well, so she's all about nurturing conversations and creating connections for individuals with memory issues. And then we brought together Fotavia, which has these beautiful artists and immersive remembrance content. It's just absolutely gorgeous what they put together, photographically and visually, and with songs as well. And then Discover Live, who they do both live and on-demand world tours, and they just have amazing amount of content from individuals that are literally going around the world. And this is great for reminiscence as well. Trying to remember what was it like when we were in Paris, or what was it like when we went to Spain, or I've never been there and I've always wanted to, and creating that journey. And so we brought everybody together, and then we put it on a single technology platform with this company called Quilt, so that allows us to have a single sign-on for everybody from a technical standpoint, that allows our content to seamlessly integrate with a calendar, so that you can go on there and literally say, I want to listen to Coro Health at 2:00 on Wednesday, and I want to listen to a lecture or watch a lecture, from One Day University at noon on Thursdays. And, I want to conduct a fitness class on noon. You can just drop it into the calendar and it automatically comes up and plays at those times of day. So it was really a cool opportunity. And so there's 3 different bundles that we offer. The original bundle, which has Spiro, Coro, and One Day University. And then the memory bundle, which is specifically for those that have, communities that have memory care, or individuals that are trying to support those with having some sort of Alzheimer's, dementia, or related disorder. So that includes Spiro, Coro, Memory Bio, and Fotavia. And then we have the Premier Bundle, which has all 7 in one. And so, it's a great opportunity, to get access to the content. We offer huge discounts on it. I mean, each one of those individually sell for about $100 per month per user there. And so you can bundle it up and you can get them, for a fraction of the price, up to 70% off on all of them. So if you buy them all together. So it's a really inexpensive, great way to get the best companies in the entire industry that offer engagement content.
Wow, that's fantastic. And is it specifically for communities versus, let's say, home health care or individuals living at home?
It's definitely covers both. As a matter of fact, we're working right now with a couple of very large home care companies that we're going to be launching and announcing relationships with here in the next few months. So it's absolutely for both.
Fantastic. Oh my gosh. Now, is there anything we haven't covered? Because we've covered a lot of ground here today.
Gosh, we have covered a lot. I don't think so. I think you picked my brain in just about every category that I can imagine. So we even covered some personal stuff before we got on the phone. So we got on. So yeah, I think we've covered it.
Wonderful. Well, Dave, I really appreciate your time with us today, and more so, I appreciate all you're doing to change dementia care out there. I just think it's absolutely fabulous. Your insights, your motivation, your passion to really make a difference just shines through. And I love your collaborative heart. Pulling others together. I just think makes an easier path for everyone, and I think it allows us to serve people faster and better as well. And so, again, thank you so much. As always, I like to ask our listeners to be a giver of hope and like, click, and share this episode. You never know who's in your sphere on Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter or wherever you're connected, who is looking for this information. Might be a little shy at reaching out, might be somebody that you know that you don't know is even dealing with dementia or having questions about looking for support, because people still keep this as a really private conversation, and we have to change that. We have to make things easier for people to find. So please take that second. It doesn't cost you any money and takes very little time to make a difference in someone else's life by sharing information that is just critical. Again, you can go to corohealth.com, which is their website. You can find them on Facebook at Coro Health TX. They are on Instagram as Coro Health, also on X or Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn, all as Coro Health as well. So thanks, everybody. We appreciate you so much in helping us build our community. And again, Dave, I can't wait to have you on again and hear what'll be new next time when we talk.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you for all that you do. You're an amazing person, and all that you offer is an amazing resource to so many people. So I can't thank you enough.
Thanks, everybody. We'll talk soon. Bye bye. Well, hi, I'm Lori LeBay, and I wanted to tell you about Alzheimer's Speaks, which is another great podcast. You see, my own mother lived with dementia for 30 years, and I felt lost. Did you know every 3 seconds someone in the world is being diagnosed with dementia? Odds are it's going to hit your families too. We want to help you connect to services, products, tools, research, and stories so you can be prepared. Please subscribe to Alzheimer's Speaks on your favorite podcast platform.